Good morning. Welcome to the Garden Show. I'm Andy Brownell on KROC-AM along with Scott Moon from Sargent on Second. It's another Saturday, ready to talk about everything. I don't know, what is it doing now? It's not...
It's still growing.
Some things.
It's still green. A lot
it
of
is
the
still
leaves
green.
are brown.
Yeah. 282-1234 is the number. We'll be taking calls all the way up till almost 9 o'clock about your gardening, your shrubbery, your tree trimming, your lawn, whatever you have a question about. Scott Moon from Sargent on Second is in the studio, ready to assist. And we do have a phone call right away. We have a couple lines open. If you want to get in, now is a great time. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Fall kind of crept up on me.
Okay. Always does.
All right. The leaves are pretty thick on the lawn and needs to be removed. Pulled off.
Mm-hmm.
Is it too late to do a weed and feed type lawn fertilizer?
Yes. A weed and feed fertilizer. You could still kill weeds, but I would recommend spraying the weeds. And you can still fertilize, but I would use a winterizer fertilizer. If you do a weed and feed bag of fertilizer, the problem with that this time of year is it does have a lot more nitrogen in it than what you need, and you do not need a ton of nitrogen right now. So actually fall is a very good time to kill the weeds. So, you could still go and get, whether it's a ready-to-use bottle or a concentrate of Weed Beater Ultra or a similar broadleaf weed killer, and those will knock out the weeds. Now, when this time of year when we're having rains and kind of like what looks like we're going to have here the next 3 days off and on showers, it needs to stay dry for at least 12 hours after you apply the product.
Okay, but it's okay to do it in both at the same time?
Absolutely. You can still do it all at the same time. So, go ahead and, get as many leaves up off the yard as you possibly can. And, if you mow first, that's even better, just, because when you kill the weeds, you don't want to go in and mow, a day later and cut off the top of the weeds while they're bringing down the weed killer down into the root system. So,
is 2,4-D appropriate for that kind of killing?
Yeah, if you're just killing basic broadleaf weeds, like dandelions, those are going to be the most common, or any type of plantain, the 2,4-D will work just fine. If it's creeping Charlie and clover, then you probably need something a little bit stronger.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the call. 282-1234 is the number. Now, the lawns this year, the past few years, around this time of the season, we've been stressing our lawns big time. They're parched, and then we finally did get the precipitation late in the season. But now this fall, from August all the way through September, we had adequate rain on our lawns.
Yeah, the lawns look excellent now.
Is that going to translate into an easier time next spring?
The lawns probably, when they go into winter really stressed, it will sometimes, depending on what we get for snow and so on, in the spring can really kind of start out a little bit slower, and they green up a little bit slower because there's not a lot of moisture there. This year, with what we've been having, next spring, I think that grass will just wake up and take off.
It was sure nice to have it thick and lush without having to get sprinklers out there.
That's right.
282-1234 is our number for KROC-AM and the Garden Show. You need to turn down your radio before I can bring you up, okay? Good morning. You're on the Garden Show. Hello. Good morning. I think they're turning down the radio. Hi. Good morning.
I have a question regarding the gourds.
Yeah.
Would you know how to dry them, what you need to do to dry them? So I have the gourds for, to make birdhouses out of.
Okay. I got you now. I have never done that before, where you would dry them and then make the birdhouses. So no, I can't give you that information.
Okay,
on how to do that. I apologize, but I've never done that before. Okay.
You
You're
stumped
welcome.
the garden man.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not that crafty of a guy, Andy.
I guess I never even heard of it. So,
well,
you're one up on me.
There are gourds. There are gourds that you can plant in the springtime that are they're called birdhouse gourds, and so it's normally a little bit thinner walled gourd, and it is shaped, I guess I want to call it kind of like a giant pear. So it's really fat at the base, and then the neck is a little bit longer, and you're able to cut out and make it into a bird house. And it dries pretty hard, almost to, wood sturdiness. And but I've never done it before, so I don't know what
I could just go buy a couple pieces of lumber and nail them together.
You could. Yes, you could, Andy.
Slap some paint on it, and I'm all ready to go. 282-1234 is the number for the Garden Show. All the lines are open right now. Great time to get in with questions for Scott Moon from Sargent's on Second. We'll be doing the program all the way till almost 9 o'clock this morning. News at the bottom of the hour. So, as you mentioned, use the evil word winter,
yes.
The winterizer. This is the time to
is the time to put the winterizer down on your lawn. And if you were going to fertilize one time a year, this would be the time of year that you want to put down a fertilizer.
This is the best one.
This is the best one. The fertilizer does get broken down this time of year. Grass really does not, the roots especially, do not quit growing until it really is cold. Yes, the grass on top is slowing its process down. You're maybe mowing not as often as you were before, but those roots are still pretty active, so they're able to draw up that fertilizer and strengthen themselves going into winter, and they store a lot of that energy, and then next spring your grass will just pop up so much quicker. It just greens quicker, it thickens up quicker. And if you think about it, I mean, spring is when everything wakes up. That's when everything really just starts taking off, and they're just really moving from, trees and shrubs and everything. That spring is the big draw up to get going. So if you have fertilizer in there, that is a great thing for your lawn if that's what you want to do. And, to have that healthy lawn from not having weeds and so on, fertilizing really does take care of a lot of that.
And that's because it crowds out the weeds, is that it?
It crowds out the weeds, exactly.
And that way you don't have that horrible hassle of dealing with it.
Right.
All right, so if I do have the weeds, and I'm out there thinking, we'll do a call here.
Okay.
And then we'll talk more about the nasty weeds. Good morning.
Fine.
You're on the Garden Show. Thanks for calling.
Just wondering what the fertilizer levels are that we should be using this year, or this time of year.
Oh, what the analysis would be on the bag?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Well, normally everybody's bags are different, or companies are different. What it comes down to is when you look at that nitrogen that they're saying, yes, this is what you want to use for nitrogen. You just don't want it to be a quick release nitrogen where it just pushes itself out really quickly. So it's more like urea nitrogen. That's a real quick release. And so, the fertilizer we sell has the first number is a 12 in it. So 12% nitrogen versus I think the Scott's company, theirs is like at 28%. But again, it's a very slow release nitrogen that most of the Scott's winterizers are putting out right now. The middle number you won't see. The middle number is phosphorus, and you will not see any phosphorus in there. And then the last number is potassium, and that's normally in that 14 to 15 range, right in there. So 12, 0, 14. Again, Scott's was like 28, 0, 15. So just, don't put down just regular lawn fertilizer. Make sure it does say winterizer fertilizer or a fall fertilizer. Okay. That's what you want to go for.
So the winterizer or fall fertilizer, that's the slow release stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the call. Is it possible to put too much nitrogen on it?
It is this time of year, but nitrogen is still the lawn does need nitrogen in the fall time, but it's just that you don't want that quick release nitrogen. That's really the big thing.
You want it to lay down there
right?
In the dirt.
Like in the springtime when you put down, say, your crabgrass preventer, that has a very high nitrogen number, and that's really waking the grass up as well and getting it going, and it greens up quicker. But that one is a real quick release nitrogen, so it just makes a difference.
282-1234. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I planted strawberries this year, two kinds. I planted the June-bearing and the ever-bearing.
Okay.
And they both did well.
Sure.
But I got a problem with mice and chipmunks eating most of them. I only got a handful that I could get early enough, or before it turned ripe. And I put traps out. I trapped many chipmunks. I trapped mice. I cannot seem to control it. Is there some kind of a guard you can put over that would still make it easy to pick them? Like, I know there's netting and stuff, but I mean, isn't that hard to pick them afterwards?
Yeah, when you put netting down or around your strawberries, the netting tends to keep the birds away somewhat, and larger animals, like squirrels and possibly chipmunks, but mice are so tiny they can crawl through almost anything and squeeze through anything. So that's really a little bit harder to do. There are some repellents that you can sprinkle. If you were doing it with strawberries, I guess I would recommend more doing a perimeter sprinkling of either it's called Repelzol or liquid fence, and it's a granular form. And if you sprinkle that around the perimeter, that it does help in. It's not so much for mice, but anything from squirrels to chipmunks to skunks to raccoons. Those, it really does a pretty decent job of repelling them away from the area.
Okay.
So the other thing that you could look at doing when it's really, depending on your strawberry bed, if it's a really thick bed and really overcrowded, if you can thin that out a little bit or have some rows in between, they may tend to stay out of there a little bit more versus where they have lots of covering. So
this was my first year, so I mean,
I just
got them in there. But now we live in a wooded area, so we keep, we're just inundated with critters.
Right.
And the other thing, like now for winter, I put straw down.
Yep.
Is that what they talk? And then do I just leave that, or do you remove that? Does it grow through there in the spring?
No, you want to remove the straw in the springtime. Then you want to remove a majority of it. You don't have to get every last piece, but you don't want to suffocate them in the springtime either. They will start growing a little bit through that, but once about the first part of April, mid-April time frame, you can go ahead and start pulling that straw off. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
calling in. You hope by April we'll be able to do that.
Optimistic.
Good morning. You're on with Scott Moon from Sargent on 2nd. Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
I have another question on the grass.
Yeah.
I have seeded a small area approximately a month ago, and it's still pretty thin.
Yep.
And I'm wondering what I should do over the winter or this fall to protect that new seeding.
Yeah. Well, you really don't need, long as that grass is starting to grow and come up, you don't need to put down really any kind of covering over the top of it.
Okay.
However, if the only suggestion I would say to that is if it's an area where you get a lot of erosion, you may want to sprinkle a light layering of some straw down just to protect the dirt from eroding too quickly. But if it's in a flat area, no, you should be just fine, sir.
Yeah, it's around the garage, so it's got a pretty good slope, and there's no eave.
Sure.
So,
and
the light sprinkling of straw would do it. Then.
Yep, you bet. And don't be afraid to, if you're fertilizing your lawn this fall, go ahead and put some fertilizer. Go ahead and run fertilizer into that area as well, and that will certainly, give it a little bit added boost as well in the springtime. A lot of that seed that won't germinate this spring will sit there through the winter, and it won't rot, and next spring it should pop itself back up. So
I should go with that, 12-0-14 or something like that? You had it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for for calling the show. We'll be taking more of your calls after the news break all the way up to about 9 o'clock. It's the Garden Show on KROC-AM. Cloudy and 40 in downtown Rochester. Back right after the news break. Welcome back to the Garden Show. I'm Andy Brownell, along with Scott Moon from Sargent's on Second. Again, that phone number is 282-1234. If you have any questions for Scott, give us a ring. We'll be here till just about 9 o'clock. And let's go straight to the phone, Scott. Good morning. You're on KROC, the Garden Show.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a young maple tree. Well, it's 4 years old.
Okay.
I'd like to cut off some of the lower branches. What's the best season to do that?
You can do that now, sir. That's fine. The biggest time that I would not trim the branches on a maple tree would be right away in the springtime when they're starting to wake up and leaf out. That's when that sap tends to really, the sap is flowing a lot, and as soon as you make a cut, the sap is going to run out of those areas a lot quicker. But right now, you'd be just fine, so not a problem to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Speaking of frost,
yes,
possibility of that tonight. We're not under an advisory or anything yet, but if we get low 30s like that, 30 to 32, is that going to be enough to be a killing frost?
It will be on some of your more tender plants, and it really depends how long it stays at that 30 degrees or below freezing. Basically, if it stays there for a longer period of time, then yes, it's going to knock more of those plants out, but. These cooler weathers, the plants are acclimating to that, especially, your annuals are kind of acclimating somewhat to that.
I'm not.
So they can handle these light frosts, but, it's kind of coming to the end of their run here. But, with that said, a lot of people can you can certainly keep enjoying those annuals, and if you want to cover them if you're, unsure, but, unfortunately,
it's
in
coming.
The next couple of weeks, it's coming.
Because we're already at that time now. It's the normal time of the year for this killing
Absolutely.
frost.
Yep.
282-1234, couple lines open. Thanks for calling in. You're on the Garden Show. Good morning.
Has Rochester had a killing frost yet? Thank you.
This year, no.
No, we have not had a killing frost yet.
We've had some mornings where it looked, you had some white on the lawn.
Right, but not that I'm aware of, at least not in the inner Rochester area here at all, I don't think.
I haven't unhooked the hose yet.
Yeah.
We better not have.
I know, this morning when I walked out and a few of my tender annuals, the taller ones didn't look as nice, but I think that was probably more just from that harsh wind yesterday that we had, and it was cold wind, so that makes a big difference too, that they're going to start looking tattered, and the wind does make a huge difference on some of those things.
Yeah, we didn't see the 50-mile-an-hour winds, but north of here there were some pretty good winds going on.
Right.
The Garden Show on KROC-AM, almost till 9 o'clock this morning with Scott Moon from Sargent's on Second. 282-1234 is the number. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show.
Is that me?
Yes,
it is.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a summer spaghetti squash plant.
Okay.
And how do you know when they're ripe? And do the squashes, do they tolerate light frost?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the squash will tolerate a light frost. That's fine. The ripening. Let me ask you that skin or the outer skin on the squash itself. Can you tell a difference in the coloring of it at all, or is it still pretty, really, really?
They start out a little bit green, and then they kind of go to white,
right? And
then they end up kind of a pale streaked yellow.
Yeah, yep. And that's really it. I guess I've always looked at the skin color, as it gets to that pale yellow part, that that is going to be its ripening point. Now, depending when we do end up getting a hard killing frost, that squash still can ripen off the vine if you pick it to a point. It's not going to, if they're starting to turn and getting to that more pale yellow, they'll probably reach that point. But if they're, really quite green yet when you pick them, chances of them ripening on their own, off the vine is going to be slim.
But so if there's a real hard frost, you should probably take them in.
Yeah, if there's a real hard frost, it is a good idea to go ahead and take them in. Yep.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for calling in. 282-1234 is the number for the Garden Show on KROC-AM. All the lines are open right now. great opportunity to give Scott a call if you'd like to. Join us on the radio this morning. That would be wonderful. Before the news break, I started to ask you about, right now, is this the ideal time to lay down some seed? Or is it a decent time? What should I be doing?
Yeah, if you want to lay down seed, what you're basically dormant seeding at this point. That grass seed will not germinate, unless we had just a turnaround in temperatures. But
there he is being optimistic again.
Yeah, but it's really your dormant seeding. So the issue that you come up with, depending on where you're throwing that seed down, if you're doing areas in your lawn where you're still going to be doing raking of the leaves and bagging up the leaves, and if you're putting seed down, you're going to constantly disturb that throughout. So if it's an area where you can stay away from, fine. But otherwise, it's probably better now just to wait another couple 3 weeks and then put your seed down if it's an area where you're really going to be constantly disturbing the soil, because that seed will just get redistributed so many times that you'll end up either raking it out of there or burying it so deep it won't come up.
It's already too late to get germination.
Right.
That's what you tell me.
Correct.
282-1234. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show.
Yeah, I have a mature white birch clump.
Okay.
And I'm wondering when's the best time to put that stuff in the ground for that beetle that gets in there, whatever.
You want to do that in the springtime, sir.
Okay.
And you can put, depending on what product you're using, there is it's a incloperid is one of the products that you can put down in the fall time, or in the springtime, either way. But if it's just a systemic insecticide that doesn't have that incloperid in it, then it's best to wait till springtime to put it down.
But now that they usually inject that, don't they, around the base of the tree?
Yes, if you have a tree company come in and do it, they would probably, depending on the company, but yes, they normally inject it. And if it's a tree company, that's probably a product similar like that or similar to that can be done in the fall time as well. So if they're recommending fall, and it's the product that will, can be done this time of year, it's certainly fine to do. So
can you recommend anybody? Do you know anybody in town?
There's a lot of arborist companies in town. Meyer Tree and Lawn, Jay does a great job and love working with them. But there's a lot of other companies as well. That's just one that comes off the top of my head that we do work with.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks for calling in. 282-1234. We have one line open at this point. Good morning. You're on with Scott Moon from Sargent on Second. Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Could you tell me when's the best time to trim pear trees? Would it be later in the fall or early in the spring?
The pear trees and other fruit trees, it's best to do that, after they basically go dormant. You can certainly do some, trimming on them during the season if you need to, but really when they're dormant, so from November through March, you could certainly get out there and do your trimming and open them up or thin them out, whatever you're trying to do. That by far is the best time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right,
thank you.
Thanks for your call. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show.
Morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
I've got to ask a dumb question. I've got mushrooms growing in my yard. Is there anything I can do about that?
No, there really isn't.
There's nothing I can come to the store to get, like a spray or a powder or anything?
Let's get a golf club and start whacking away.
Mushrooms are growing because there's probably some type of high organic matter underneath the turf in your lawn or underneath the bark in your beds that mushrooms will start. And when we have cooler, damper weather, they tend to really be quite aggressive. But then as things dry out, they will disappear.
Okay.
But it's just kind of a cyclical thing with the weather. And a lot of times you see more mushrooms growing, especially if you've taken down trees in your yard.
Yep, that's what we did.
And those roots are starting to rot. And as those roots rot, it's just great. It's just a great starter bed for mushrooms. And, the only thing to do is, just go in there and either mow or rake and just get rid of them. Yes, a few more will pop up, but as we dry out, they'll disappear as well.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Bye.
Those things, we had one this summer, actually late summer.
Mm-hmm.
It was the size of I don't know, almost. It wasn't a volleyball, but
sure,
it
was
was
good size.
But it popped up. I mean, literally overnight.
Wow!
I'd like to have a camera on that thing as it came up. That must have. You went, wow, that wasn't there yesterday.
Yes.
That's insane. All right, we have a couple more calls. A couple lines open as well at 282-1234, and we'll be taking calls for probably almost another 10 minutes. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I wondered about Creeping Charlie. We still have it. Is there any way to treat it now?
Yes, there is. Have you tried treating it in the past at all? With
I have.
What kind of product are you using,
I
ma'am?
went to your store and got something.
Okay. And it hasn't done a very good job, or
no? It did last year, but not this year. And now I'd really like to do something before next year.
Sure. Well, the beauty of this product, and hopefully they sold you this product, but it's called Weed Beater Ultra.
Yeah.
And you can use this product all the way into fall when the temperatures are still above 40 degrees. So this is a great time of year to go after the Creeping Charlie. And, go ahead and get it sprayed. But, find that window of opportunity when we're not going to have rain after you apply it for 12 hours. Okay. So that's the big thing. Make sure it's not too windy. You don't want it to be blown into your other flower beds, but this is a great time to do it. You can certainly do it in the spring as well, but the great thing about getting weeds this time of year is that they're trying to slow their process down, store food and nutrients for the winter, and when you're using a weed killer, it basically makes that weed almost grows so fast that it just kills itself. So because of fall, and you're kind of reversing that to them, you just get a very, very good kill. So I would not be afraid to use it this time of year and get ahead of that.
Okay, and then put it through the hose sprayer, or just spray it by hand?
You can, depending on what you have, you can use a hose end sprayer when you use it. If you're using the Weed Beater Ultra, you really need to use the hose end sprayer that Bonide makes, because it's a real thick concentration, and some sprayers don't handle that real thick concentration going through it. So otherwise, you can mix it in, a regular pump-up sprayer or just a ready-to-use sprayer, and spray it through that way, and it tends to do very well that way as well.
Okay, and not rain for 12 hours, and it should be above 40 degrees.
Yes, if it's above 40 degrees, you're fine.
And then we cut the grass first, or not, to be able to see it? Maybe do it while the grass...
Creeping Charlie stays so low to the ground to begin with, so even when you mow, you're not really mowing that much of the Creeping Charlie off. So I like to mow first and then go and spray personally. I think you can just get so the grass isn't covering as much of that Creeping Charlie up, and you'll just get much better coverage.
Good. And then do you have it at your 18th Avenue store?
Yep, we have it at our 18th Avenue store, you bet.
Okay. And then one more question.
Sure.
I brought in a whole bunch of plants last night in lieu of rain or freeze or something, and I usually spray them so that insects don't get in. Is that a good idea, like some type of an insect spray?
Yes, that's a very good idea to do. When you're starting to bring plants inside, you might have some insects that are on there living already, or there might be some eggs that have already been laid, and when they come from outside to inside, especially those eggs, as soon as you start getting some warmth in a couple of weeks, you could really end up getting a lot of insects in your house. So it is a very good idea to, spray them down really well with an all-purpose insecticide or a insecticidal soap. Let them dry, and then, bring them into your house.
Good. Okay. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your call. 282-1234. About 5 minutes left on the Garden Show on this Saturday morning. If you'd like to give us a call, I have a question for Scott Moon from Sargent on 2nd. All right, so we're into October.
Yes.
Okay, we've got the winterizer we can put down. Mm-hmm. I'm going to hold off on my dormant seeding.
Yep.
I can spray for weeds.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take a call.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a chance to do a checklist of what we
bet.
can be doing at this time. Good morning. You're on the Garden Show. Thanks for calling.
Our Arbor vitae
Mm-hmm.
and our long needle pine trees have a lot of brown in them this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not blighting or anything, are they?
No, is that brown really more on the inner side? I mean, quite a ways in.
Well, you can really see it when you look at the trees. They
Right,
look like
right.
they've been sprayed or something. Yeah.
Yeah, this time of year you notice it. It's those third-year needles or older needles that are starting to drop, and it's normally more towards the inner. And you do see it this time of year in the fall time. They will just drop, and you're going to get new growth next year coming out, and it will fill itself back in. So no, they're not. Normally, they're not blighting at all. It's just a common thing that you see. And, some years it's more prevalent than others, seeing all those needles.
Sure is.
But
Yeah,
if it was on the outer edges and those needles were browning, yes, then I would be a little more concerned. But if it's inner, that's really just a common process that these evergreens go through.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the call. 282-1234. We have a couple lines open, a couple more minutes left in the show. Good morning. You're on with Scott Moon.
Hi, would that be me?
It is.
Okay. I've got nice shade in my backyard.
Yeah.
And that has made it really hard to grow grass in certain spots. So I bought some shady lawn seed.
Yep.
What's a good time to put that down in the spring?
If you want to put it down in the spring, you can put it down this time of year and you're really dormant seeding, but go ahead and let that shade tree drop all of its leaves now at this point. Get those leaves to drop. Then you can go ahead and prepare the bed, rake it up, soften up that, dirt down an inch or two if you can. If you can't get an inch or two, at least a half an inch, because you want that bed to be somewhat soft for that seed to set itself in. And, at this point, you're really dormant seeding, so that grass seed will just lay there all winter, and then next spring it will start to germinate. You can also do it in the springtime if you want. Either time, it's just, if you have a chance to do it this time of year and a couple more weeks after those leaves have dropped and the ground is, somewhat dry, it's a lot easier to try to do now, waiting till next spring, and then you have the spring rains and it's wet. It's just hard to decide when to get it down there. But the big thing is let those leaves drop so you have a nice clear bed where you're not disturbing the bed once the grass seed has been planted.
Well, the tree that's the biggest culprit is a linden.
Okay.
And it will not drop its leaves till it sees nice white snow on the ground.
Well, if it gets to that point, and you're not able to, get the grass seed down, then again, the seed will be fine next spring to do. But if you go to all this work of getting the grass seed down, and then the linden leaves drop, and then you go in and try to rake up all those leaves, you're just going to disturb a lot of that seed bed and redistribute that seed, that you're just not going to have a very good germination rate at that point.
What about leaving the linden leaves on top of the seed bed? Is that bad?
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, but you do want to get those leaves then off next spring, fairly early, but you have to do it gently again because you don't want to disturb the seed bed. So you're kind of in a conundrum there a little bit. So
I could actually blow them around a little bit.
Yeah, if you could blow them around, that's fine. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Right, thanks for the call. That's going to kind of wrap us up here. We've
All
got
right.
about 30 seconds left, Scott. Just real quick, if I do the seeding this fall, the dormant seeding, I still have to worry about the crabgrass preventer in the spring, don't I?
You do, but although, grass, if you get this grass seed down and, in the springtime, as things start to wake up, that seed will start to germinate quite quickly, and you can still get your crabgrass preventer down all the way through till, the third week of May, fourth week of May, depending on how warm it gets.
So I probably get some germination.
You can yeah, absolutely.
Once again, you're thinking optimistically.
Yes, I am.
Scott Moon. from Sargent's on Second, another garden show in the books, and we'll see you again next Saturday.
I'll be here.
As long as things are still growing for us and we're still cleaning up the gardens. That's right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
All right.
We'll see you next Saturday. It's 40 and cloudy in downtown Rochester. Mayo Clinic Radio Weekend is coming up in just a moment. ABC News at 9 o'clock here on KROC-AM.